As times have changed, the complexities of society have changed. The vision of Bowne has remained the same. That is to deepen what it is it touches, to learn what it needs to address the concerns, and to leave a situation better than it found it by enabling those who are involved in that situation to have a set of skills that enable them to determine their destiny.
The Robert Bowne Foundation was begun in 1968. Ted Stanley took the Bowne Company, Bowne & Co. public, and used some of the money to begin this foundation. Bowne & Co. was actually the first incorporated company in New York. It was started by Robert Bowne, who was one of the founders of New York Hospital, of the Bank of New York, of many of the important institutions that still exist in the city. There's just a long history of people who, were able to listen to each other, to learn from the communities. Ted named the foundation after Robert Bowne because he had those qualities and Ted had those qualities.
The social, historical, political context of this foundation was in the 60s. So I cannot imagine that these things that were happening in the country and in the world did not have some profound impact on what Ted was hoping to do.
Ted, in the early days of the foundation, would look for youth organizations, and he would read the newspaper, and if an article about an organization struck his fancy, he would pursue it. And on this particular day, there was a story about a storefront newspaper in Harlem called 40 Acres and a Mule. So he just went up and visited, just called up, made an appointment to visit this newspaper, and also gave them a check. Another quick story, the company was on Hudson Street, 345 Hudson Street, right in the village. And one day he happened to be walking home from lunch and he heard music coming out of this building. And when he looked and saw it was a music school for children, he came to his office and he said, "They're in our community. This is where our business is located. We need to support them." So again, it just is, these are two stories to illustrate how generous, but how important he thought community was.
It's hard to talk about Bowne and after-school education without talking about Diane. Because Diane had a kind of vision long before after-school education or after the third arena, before any of this became like rolls off our tongues. Diane had a vision. Maybe it was connected to her work in the adult literacy community, her work as the executive director of literacy volunteers and working closely in communities and seeing the needs of communities. And I think because of her vision, she was able to call upon a strength base of that larger community and use its best thinking to facilitate the needs of the then beginning after school community.
By the time I joined the groups in 1989, she had put together, through funding, the Institute for Literacy Studies, Literacy Assistance Center, the American Reading Council, and then ultimately Brooklyn in Touch, she put together a group of people who were her TA providers. So the TA providers would go out to the programs. We would go out to the programs and find out what they wanted to do and try to help them learn how to do it.
And Lena, what I think is really important about what you're saying through this phase as Diane now, who has
Exactly.
done her homework about the community. She is putting an infrastructure in place of bringing in those colleagues and partners in the field of practice who know the work,
Right.
and bringing them together to support the work of the field.
Learning communities are so powerful, especially learning communities that meet over time, get to develop relationships, and can really begin to take the risks that we want our own young people to take. And that's what I think is most important about the work we do.
What I consistently hear from programs is also the part that I feel the best about. Programs are saying, and staff are always saying to me, is there is no other funder works with us the way you do. You give us support, you listen to our challenges, you try to figure out capacity building, technical assistance that will help us get better and build our sustainability.
There's such a genuine interest in the program. They have helped us develop and support our work, and that's what we really appreciated all these years. It's great to have a foundation, it's great to have the money coming in, but Bound has always been more than just money. It's about interest in your work and about improving quality and helping you develop goals and helping you reach those goals.
So one of the things that we learned through our experience in the library workshops through the Bound has helped fund is that we have to figure out what our community needs in terms of literacy and in terms of space for learning and gathering and reading. And so our library looks very different than it did 5-6 years ago. And our farm is sort of the same way. Like, we've had to figure out what grows well up here, what doesn't, what the people in our food pantry actually want to take with them.
I loved working with the Bowne Foundation because they were very hands-on. I could, anytime we had questions or we were stuck or we weren't sure what to do, they were always there. Like, you could talk to them, you could be like, I'm stuck in this, or can you come in and meet with the staff about this, because they're just not getting it from my point of view. Maybe, when we did this together, it was really great. I want to bring that to my program, and they were there. Like, I've never had that with funders. I mean, they come, they visit, they go. It wasn't really like that with them. It was more of a relationship. They showed that it doesn't have to be a 3-hour meeting or a 5-hour training to make change. Change can happen slowly.
2, 1.
One day, Masterman was walking down the street. He decided to get an ice cream cone on his way to the train.
When I think about who we have funded over the years, funding those to do the work in the community, but also understanding the importance of what is the level of scholarship that the community needs to generate through its own research and development. Mm-hmm. So creating a publication like After School Matters, it speaks to, if I could think of one thing, Bowne has spoken to multiple voices from policy, advocacy, the field of practice, research, and scholarship. After School Matters is another way of taking the inquiry model of practitioners' own voices in the work of after-school education, and what might we learn from them about what it is they do. The foundation may end as we are spending down at this point, but the work of Bowne will be continuing in the many programs that we have served, in the infrastructures that are in place, and the hub will be a resource to the after-school community.
So the hub will allow people to go to one place and be able to find information at various levels about after school, out of school time, and what people are doing in that field.
and it'll be an online, a virtual space for the kinds of practices, beliefs, and ideas that Bowne has helped to establish in the field of practice.
That's right.
Those things are now going to still be available or accessible to people through this resource that's being designed.
That's right.
Okay.
And beyond that, a really important piece of our work is that we just keep learning. So it won't be static. The people who go to the hub, who participate in the activities, will be learning, and that will shape what's on the hub.
You know, Bowne has established trust. So when the funder comes out to visit, it's not with the white glove or the checklist to tell you what you're not doing right, therefore your funding could be rescinded. When Bowne goes out to visit, it's to learn about what you are doing, to have you describe back to them what you see yourself as doing, where you are having problems, and how are we going to address those problems. What a different way of being. So shifting the relationship between the role of power. A foundation has power. So how do you use that power to engage rather than to offend, set off, or make people frightened? I think when we work in partnership with our fundees, they really believe that they are in partnership with someone who holds them at a high standard and helps them to reach it.